That night changed everything in a way I never expected. It started with a simple request from my stepmom, Victoria, asking me to stay home while Thomas went on his usual fishing trip. It felt like any other weekend with just the two of us, but I had no idea this night would become something far more complicated, something that would test the boundaries of our relationship and leave a lasting mark on my heart. The house was unusually quiet that morning. The familiar presence of Thomas was missing, and the silence felt unsettling. I had just finished my homework and was ready to unwind when Victoria called me into the living room. Make sure to subscribe to my channel so I can keep bringing you more true stories like this one. Don't forget to watch until the end and like the video. This one is going to be incredibly interesting. Please hit the like button to show your support. Can you help me with something? She asked in a soft, almost casual tone. I could tell something was off, but I couldn't quite place it. After a brief hesitation, I replied, "Sure, what do you need?" and moved toward her. Victoria usually carried herself with calm confidence, but today the air felt different. She smiled, yet there was an intensity in her eyes that made my heart beat faster. "Come sit down," she said, patting the cushion next to her. I did as she asked, curiosity building inside me. She leaned back on the couch, crossing her legs and looking at me with a gaze that caught me off guard. "You've really grown up," she said lightly, though her words carried more weight than usual. "You're not the little boy I knew anymore." I felt a sharp pang in my chest. This felt different from our usual friendly conversations. "I guess," I mumbled, unsure how to respond. She leaned in slightly, keeping her eyes fixed on mine. "No, really," she pressed. "You've changed, and I think we both know it." Her words sent a chill down my spine. The air between us felt charged with unspoken tension. "Victoria, what are you trying to say?" I finally asked, the question forcing its way out. I needed to understand why everything suddenly felt so strange. She looked at me for a long moment, searching for the right words, before sighing and standing up to look out the window. "Thomas is gone for the weekend," she said quietly, her gaze distant. "It's just the two of us here." I nodded, confused, the knot in my stomach tightening. She turned to face me, her expression unreadable. "You know, I've been thinking," she continued softly. "There are things I've been wanting to talk to you about. Things I've never had the courage to say until now." My throat tightened. "Like what?" I asked. She stepped closer, locking her gaze onto mine. "Like us," she said simply. The word hung in the air and my heart began to race. What was she implying? This didn't make sense. I tried to laugh it off, but my voice came out shaky. "What do you mean, us?" Victoria gave me a knowing smile that sent a wave of unease through me. "You've noticed it too, haven't you?" she asked softly. "The way things have changed between us. We're not just stepmother and stepson anymore." My mind spun as I tried to process her words. I had felt the subtle shifts, the lingering glances, the quiet moments, but I had convinced myself they meant nothing. "I don't know what you mean," I lied, my voice barely a whisper. She stepped even closer, her presence overwhelming. Suddenly the room felt much smaller. "Yes, you do," she said softly, her fingers brushing lightly against my arm. "You've felt it too." I stood up abruptly, stepping away to clear my head. "This is crazy, Victoria," I said, my voice trembling. "You're my stepmom. We can't." We shouldn't, but she didn't step back. Instead, she followed, closing the space between us. "Why not?" she whispered, her gaze intense. "We're both adults. We don't have to follow anyone else's rules." I shook my head, trying to resist the confusing pull. "No, this isn't right," I insisted, even as I felt myself weakening. "But what if it is?" She countered gently, her hand touching my cheek. The contact sent a shock through me. For a moment I was frozen, trapped by the complicated emotion she was stirring. I wanted to push her away, to run and pretend this conversation never happened, but something kept me rooted in place. I hated myself for it. In the days that followed, the tension in the house became almost unbearable. Every time I saw Victoria, I felt the weight of everything we weren't saying pressing down on me. I tried to keep my distance, avoiding being alone with her as much as possible, but it wasn't easy. She found gentle ways to be near me, a casual touch on the arm, a lingering look. The unspoken feelings between us refused to fade. Then came the night everything shifted again. Thomas was working late, and I stayed holed up in my room, hoping that if I kept my distance, things might return to normal. But deep down, I knew they wouldn't. I heard her moving downstairs, the faint sound of the TV in the background. The seconds dragged on, making it harder to ignore the growing unease. I thought about leaving or calling a friend, but something held me back. Instead, I found myself standing at the top of the stairs, listening to the heavy silence that had settled over the house. It was too quiet, too still. That's when I made the decision that would change everything. I walked downstairs, each step feeling heavier than the last. Victoria was sitting on the couch, a glass of wine in her hand, staring distantly at the TV. She didn't notice me at first, or maybe she pretended not to. I hesitated, unsure what to say, but then she looked up. Her eyes locked with mine, and I knew there was no turning back. "Couldn't sleep?" she asked casually, though her voice carried a quiet intensity. "Yeah," I mumbled, not trusting myself to say more. I walked over and sat on the couch, leaving space between us. But the distance didn't help. I could still feel the heavy tension between us. We sat in silence for a few moments, the only sound the soft murmur of the TV. I could feel her eyes on me, her gaze lingering. Before I could find the words to break the quiet, she spoke. "I've been thinking about us," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. My heart skipped a beat. "We can't," I started to protest. "Why not?" she asked, turning to face me fully. "Why are we pretending there's nothing between us when we both know the truth?" Her words hit me hard. I wanted to argue, to tell her she was wrong, that we couldn't go down this path. But I didn't have the strength left to fight. I had felt it too, the strange, confusing pull between us that had grown stronger over time. I had tried to ignore it, to push it away, but sitting there with her, I couldn't deny the truth anymore. "We can't do this," I said, even as the words felt hollow. I was lying to her, lying to myself. She leaned in closer, her hand resting on the cushion between us. "We're not doing anything wrong," she whispered, her voice intense. "We're not hurting anyone." I shook my head, trying to clear the fog clouding my thoughts. "But it's not right," I protested weakly. She reached out and placed her hand gently over mine, sending a jolt through me. "Who says what's right and wrong?" she asked, her voice steady, her gaze never leaving mine. I couldn't move, couldn't speak. I was trapped, not by force, but by the intensity of the moment and the confusing feelings I had tried so hard to ignore for so long. "We don't have to follow anyone else's rules," she murmured, her fingers tracing light, hesitant patterns on the back of my hand. "We can decide for ourselves what feels right." I closed my eyes, trying to block out everything, her voice, her touch, the storm of emotions rising inside me. But it was impossible. The walls I had built around myself were crumbling, and I didn't know how to stop it. Before I could gather the strength to pull away, she leaned in even closer. The moment stretched on, thick with tension. Then, without thinking, I gave in. The kiss was soft at first, uncertain, but it quickly deepened with all the complicated feelings that had been building between us. For those few moments, the world seemed to disappear, leaving only the two of us caught in something we both knew was dangerous. My mind raced with 1,000 conflicting thoughts. I knew this was wrong. I knew we were crossing a line we could never uncross. But in that instant, part of me didn't care. A part of me had wanted this connection for longer than I was willing to admit. When we finally pulled apart, both of us were breathing heavily, our faces inches apart. Her eyes were dark with emotions I couldn't fully name, and I knew nothing between us would ever be the same again. "I've wanted this for so long," she whispered, her breath warm against my skin. "And I know you have too." I didn't respond. I couldn't. The truth was too overwhelming. Instead, I simply nodded, my heart pounding as the weight of what we had done settled over me. Even then, I knew it wasn't over. That moment had only been the beginning. There would be more. There would always be more. After that night, everything changed between us. I couldn't look at Victoria the same way anymore. Every time our eyes met, I felt a rush of complicated emotions, a reminder of what had happened and the unspoken promise of what might happen again. The air in the house felt charged with something dangerous, something we both understood but didn't dare speak about openly. Days passed in tense, awkward silence. I kept my distance as best I could, but it was impossible to avoid her completely. Every brush of her hand, every lingering glance felt heavy with everything we weren't saying. The tension between us refused to fade. One afternoon, while Thomas was out again, the silence in the house became unbearable. I was pacing the living room, trying to distract myself, but my thoughts kept drifting back to her, the memory of that night, the confusing pull I couldn't escape. Just when I thought I might lose myself in those thoughts, I heard her footsteps behind me. I turned to see Victoria standing in the doorway, her expression unreadable. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The tension between us was thick, heavy with everything left unsaid. "We need to talk," she said finally, her voice low and hesitant. I nodded, knowing this conversation was inevitable. "Yeah," I agreed, my throat tight. "We do." She walked over to the couch and sat down with a sigh. I followed, sitting across from her and keeping careful distance. My heart pounded and I couldn't quite meet her eyes. I didn't know how to begin or what to say that would make any of this better. "I know things have been different," she began, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "And I don't want you to feel uncomfortable." "That's the last thing I want," I swallowed hard, my mouth dry. "I don't know what to feel," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "This isn't normal, right? We're not supposed to feel this way." Victoria looked down at her hands, her expression troubled. "I know," she said softly, "but it's not something we can just ignore either. Can we?" I didn't have an answer for her. The truth was, I didn't know what we were supposed to do. Everything felt wrong, yet part of me didn't want it to stop. I couldn't explain it or rationalize it, but the feelings were there, undeniable and real. She shifted on the couch, leaning forward slightly. "I think about that night all the time," she confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. I can't stop thinking about it. My breath caught in my throat. I wanted to tell her that I thought about it too, that it haunted my every waking moment. But I couldn't bring myself to say the words. Instead, I simply nodded, my heart racing. There was a long silence between us, filled with the weight of everything we weren't saying. I could feel the tension building again, that same dangerous pull that had led us here in the first place. And then, before I could stop myself, the words slipped out. "I think about it too." Once spoken, there was no taking them back. Victoria's eyes met mine, and in that moment, I knew there was no going back. We had crossed a line, and now we stood on the edge of something even more complicated. We were trapped in a web of confusing emotions, and no matter how much we told ourselves we needed to stop, the pull between us kept drawing us closer. Her words hit me hard. I wanted to argue, to tell her she was wrong, that we couldn't go down this path. But I didn't have the strength to fight anymore. Deep down, I had felt the confusing pull between us growing stronger with time. I had tried to ignore it, but sitting there with her, I couldn't deny the truth any longer. "We can't do this," I said, even as the words felt empty. I was lying to her, lying to myself. She leaned in closer, her hand resting gently on the cushion between us. "We're not doing anything wrong," she whispered, her voice intense. "We're not hurting anyone." I shook my head, trying to clear the storm of emotions clouding my thoughts. "But it's not right," I protested weakly. She reached out and placed her hand over mine, sending a jolt through me. "Who decides what's right and wrong?" she asked, her gaze steady and unwavering. I couldn't move, couldn't speak. I felt trapped by the intensity of the moment and the complicated feelings I had tried so hard to push away. We don't have to follow anyone else's rules, she murmured, her fingers tracing light patterns on the back of my hand. We can decide for ourselves what feels right. I closed my eyes, trying to block everything out, her voice, her touch, the whirlwind inside me. But it was impossible. The careful walls I had built were crumbling, and I didn't know how to stop it.